my name is Desiree. This is my husband Nara and our son Hans. He is on the autism spectrum, diagnosed with level 2 autism, challenges with social and communication skills. After Hans just turned 1, I noticed he was not meeting some of his verbal milestones, and also when I brought him for play groups, I noticed he wasn't really playing with other kids. At the same time, he was also displaying other signs such as flapping, spinning in circles. After speaking to this lady who's a qualified counselor, she sort of confirmed my suspicions and advised us to go and get an assessment to see if that it was autism or something else.
We would like to share to the public that they should be able to accept the diagnosis of their child. If your child is already diagnosed, you've got to do something about it. Not listen to myths, not listen to other people who will come and tell you that maybe it's this, maybe that it's that. So acceptance is the key.
Hello, good afternoon. This is Malin from Hearts&Minds Development Center, and thank you if you have joined us, whoever has joined us, in our series Being Whole, Being Me, series 72. Now, what does that mean? That means we've got 28 more weeks to go before we sort of close the session. So, yes, wow. Exciting that we are at 72, but today it's really going to be very, when I say exciting, I think for me, reading about Desiree, I've never met her, reading about her, having heard, her stories and when she speaks at Clubhouse has always inspired me. So very privileged to have Desiree Kaur. Actually, I don't know how to say whether she's an acquaintance or a friend, but she's definitely an inspiration. So let's just bring her on and, be inspired. Hopefully you'll be inspired as me. So let's bring Desiree. Hi, Desiree.
Hello. Oh boy, my hello itself. Apologies to the audience. I'm recovering from a cough. But yeah, hi, Maler, and I would definitely consider you a friend. Although we've not met in person, but we've shared many rooms on Clubhouse, and Clubhouse is like, I don't know, you meet people there, and it's like you build friendships, although you don't meet face to face. And I think during the pandemic, that really helped a lot of people get supported in ways they really needed.
Exactly. I actually, Clubhouse was an amazing space to, a lot of people were saying, it's difficult to build intimate relationship virtually, but Clubhouse put a lot of those noise to rest, because I've only met generally authentic people on Clubhouse, and I think the repo, I don't know what was it about Clubhouse, but there was just something about the conversations that were real. People were real. People were talking about real issues. And well, I must certainly say that, if people can't handle the truth, they just got out of the system, is what I would say. So yes, Clubhouse is one of my most favorite places to be because they opened my mind in ways that I didn't know I could be open. So yes, I am glad that I accidentally met you wherever I met you. I can't even remember. But I definitely heard you speak and I said, I must, catch up with you. And I'm so glad. Thank you for saying yes to us, Desiree. Now, you already have a fan who has come in. This is not your fan. Gerald is my fan. Good afternoon, Mallory and Desiree. Hi, Gerald. Looking forward to another wonderful learning. Thank you, Gerald, for having supported us throughout 70s, Series 72. And Siobhan Hassan is here. And yes, oh wow, Desiree is speaking today about Project Haans. So yay. Yes, Siobhan, she is speaking. And yes, it's a yay for, I think, at many levels. So let's just get into that space and, figure it out. What is Project Haans? And, tell us your journey, Desiree.
I think in order for me to really do justice to explaining what Project Hans is all about, I have to go back in time a little bit to 2017. I always like to introduce myself as a mom first. So in 2017, our son, who was 2 at the time, received his official diagnosis of autism. And a lot of people at the time, even some, general practicing doctors, asked me, why did you get a diagnosis so soon? He's only 2. Is it even possible? And my answer is yes. So I had to educate a lot of GPs and tell them, hey, you can diagnose autism at 18 months. So on my part, my family's part, we observed a lot of the signs of autism in Hans. He had what I call the real typical symptoms: the flapping, the spinning. I think you heard in the video which Mahler showed earlier of my introduction, my very generous introduction. Thank you for that introduction, Mahler. So he had most of the typical signs, and one of the key things that really was sort of a red flag for us is he wasn't speaking. He would have words and lose them. He would babble and stop. And the other thing was socially. I mean, initially I thought, okay, maybe he just likes to be by himself because there are no other kids around at home. But put him in play groups, and he was completely happy. The thing is, with Hans' diagnosis, it wasn't all tears and sadness for us. He's generally a happy kid. Even to today, I would say he's generally a happy kid. He's just happy doing what he wants. And when he came into our lives, he was a much awaited for baby that we all wanted. So 6 years. It took us 6 years, and then I conceived him, right? So when he came to our lives, we just poured love into him. So, with those little signs he showed us, fought through the system, broke through the system, got him into a government hospital to be diagnosed. And so within the first assessment, which took about 2 hours, we got the assessment of autism. And for me, it was when the doctor said autism, it was a bit of relief because I finally confirmed my suspicion that, okay, I was right. It's autism, okay. And then I sort of panicked because I was like, what do I do now, right? I have a history of PR and communications, and anyone in that line would know that when we have a client, we always want to be subject matter experts on that. And so when autism was thrown into the mix for me as a parent, it was like, what do I do now? Where do I go, right? And it made me very angry, actually, that I didn't know enough about autism. So I went all out, tried my very best to find out as much as I could about autism. And Google really is such a scary place sometimes when you just Google things. So along the way, I met a lot of people. I visited a lot of centers. We were told what to prioritize in terms of interventions for Hans. So occupational therapy would have to take precedence because occupational therapy helps to settle them in a lot of ways that they are probably bothered sensory-wise. So occupational therapy was the way to go. So that involved me visiting various centers, talking to many people, and in fact, I had the most useful information from talking to people, right? And so eventually that spurred me into the direction of doing my master's in special education, which I've since completed. And Project Hans actually came about as a project that I did for one of my courses. So it started, so I still remember the event was on 27th of April 2019. The date 27 is very significant for us because 27 July is Hans' birthday. So
Oh,
anything with, and my mom's birthday is 27 March. 27 is a very meaningful number for us. So it started off with, I intended it to be a one-off event, an awareness event. We got Nori Abdullah to come in and speak about her experience as a parent. I partnered with Pantai Hospital. They were gracious enough to partner with me and give me their venue. I had anonymous donors who just gave me money and said, do what you want, so we could cater food for the attendees. So we had two sessions, two talks, one focusing on, of course, parents and their journey, another one focusing on employment and job coaching, which is a very neglected area, which maybe we could talk about more later. And we also had a hands-on experience where I brought in Hans OT, occupational therapist, to do a live messy play session so people could see what it was. And also, in case people brought their kids who were autistic and on the spectrum, they had a place for the kids to play, and the parents could attend the talk as well. So, and it went very well. We live streamed it on Facebook for parents who couldn't attend. And so after that, I had maintained the social media accounts. And my intention was then to maybe do it annually, do an event annually. However, pandemic, which needs no introduction. Everyone knows what the pandemic is. So then I found Clubhouse. I met people like Mahler, and I met a whole bunch of really cool and inspiring people who are autistic adults from all over, from the UK, from the US, even some here in Malaysia. And that's when it prompted me to, I have all this information. I mean, so many support groups, enjoy writing as well. Machi.com was actually where I told my story first. I wrote about my journey with Hans, and realizing that piece has so much impact on people, it prompted me to start Project Haans as a website. So today, Project Haans is a website. I have a list of resources so that parents don't have to do what I did, visit 10, 20 centers. There's a list there you can go through and then decide where you want to go and get an assessment, or you want to go for OT or speech. And it also has a collection of articles on various topics related to neurodiversity. I didn't want to limit it to just autism, because I think when we talk about acceptance, it should be all. It's just that I can't speak for other countries, but I think here in Malaysia, autism gets a lot of attention. I think the advocates are the loudest, like me, we scream the loudest. But I think the higher purpose should be for inclusion of all abilities, right? So I'm going to stop there now, Mahler, in case you have any area you want me to elaborate on more. As you heard me on Clubhouse, I can go on and on. So I'm going to pause now and
but
see.
that's why I'm feeling like so relaxed, because I feel like, okay, there's really no need to really ask questions because she'll tell us the story, right? But thank you for. I always think that when we are handed over, sometimes what we say, a set of cards that we may not like, not the best cards, right? There are two things that we can actually do. One is to say, life is not fair because I've been handed a bad set of cards, which is true, right? It's not fair, right? But also, a lot of times I'm beginning to realize is that the bad set of cards is for you to practice, so that you can be so skilled that when you get a better set of cards, you can be at your best. And I think what you have actually shared with us is how important it is to accept the set of cards you're dealt with in life, right? And look at how best you can play the game, right? And I think that's what you're sharing. What's important is we wanted to have children. We had Hans after 6 years, and he's precious. We accept him as he is, and this is something we struggle whether we're talking, and that's why I like what you said about inclusion, right? If, correct me with my language, whoever falls under the normal category, right, they face discrimination because they are not good enough in some ways, right? Yeah. And so whoever doesn't fall under the normal category, I can only imagine how much more difficulty that they would have in our own lack of self-awareness. So I think what you're doing is amazing, because you've chosen what I'll call the hero's journey, because it's not just about my pain. You see, when we are handed over pain, there are two ways to deal with it, right? One is, it's painful, I'm going to heal myself. Great. But what you're doing is that it's painful, as I'm healing my own journey and I'm learning these skills, I'm going to share with other people so that they hurt less than me, because now I know I can empower them on how to move forward. So thank you for doing this. I've told you, Project Haans is amazing. I really pray that it becomes a foundation, okay, because we need to reach out to more people, right? But let's come back to today. So I love the way you said the story. I just want to share this, right? My eldest daughter, she turns 18 this year. And yeah, for the first 3 years when she couldn't speak, when I checked in with the doctors, the doctor said, you're a overzealous mother, because now you mothers are, want them to read, want them. I say, no, I just want my daughter to smile and talk to me, right? And my mistake was I took them seriously. I didn't go searching until she turned 7, and then we found out she was dyslexic, right? And I didn't know what was it, and there wasn't much on the net either, or in this part of the world. But all I know is that I had to go to India to do some courses to understand, all right, how best to be her mother, because I had to first deal with myself as to, like, seriously, and how to deal with it, because you have both. I had both reaction. I wasn't as quickly accepting as you are. No, I wasn't. I was trying to be the hero and said, I think my daughter can do everything that everybody else could do. And then I fell flat on my face many, many times. So I know the feeling in that sense, but I'm coming from a different perspective. So I think what was amazing about you and your husband is that the quick acceptance. This is the truth. Let's make the best out of the truth and move it forward. So thank you for giving us that, because whatever our audiences who are gathered here are being challenged with, I think the first space to start is, can we accept things as they are, right? Whether we like the cards or not. All right. So help us understand, because I think you've been through, good for you, you had quick acceptance now. What do you think we, the community at large, because what I found difficult, and that's why I'm asking this question, is that I found it difficult to educate the people around me not to expect my child to have the normal milestones. And that was the most frustrating part for me, because she externally, you can't see it for her, right, but she had other difficulties, right? So when people can see it visibly, then I think, I don't know if it's acceptance, but maybe tolerance is there. But with mine, I had to keep telling my family members, people closest to me, that my child is just different. So please stop comparing and making remarks, because it's hurting me. I don't know whether it was hurting my daughter, but it was hurting me, right? That was the most difficult. So tell me, what do we as a community need to understand about autism or autism spectrum?
I like that you brought up about acceptance. So I'm just going to touch a little bit on that first before I answer the question about what people.
Desiree, you don't need my permission to do anything. Just to say what you feel like.
Thank you. I just want to say that, a lot of people always tell me, wow, it's great. You came to acceptance really quickly and all that. And I just want to tell this to people out there, that it doesn't matter when the acceptance comes, because everybody deals with things in their own way. It's just that I deal with it differently. And trust me, accepting it that soon and going in that spiral also has its downsides. I crashed and burned at one point. I burned out at one point. We are human, right? But I think that the important thing is, in that moment, we need to acknowledge what we are feeling. Even if what we are feeling is resentment or anger, I think acknowledging that is that step. And what I'm doing actually, so like I said, remember the first place I told my story was makcik.com. And when I wrote that, and when that piece got published, it hit. See, I have goosebumps now. It was a very that's when I think my healing truly began, I mean, although I say yes, I accepted it and all that, and I realized when I wrote that, I had so much to tell, and I had such positive responses, and that was actually my healing journey. So what I'm doing with Project Haans, in a little bit of a selfish way, I think it's also partly me healing, right? And if it helps people along the way, great, right? And the time when I wrote that article, I told myself, even if this touches one person, I think I've done something. And just I think last year, Makcik.com had a competition for people to write in and tell their story about a piece or article on the website that actually touched their lives in some way. And I was so surprised. The winning article was my piece. A lady who was trying to get her daughter diagnosed with autism. She read my piece and it helped her. And so that instant like really brought tears to my eyes. And I know I had done something right. Which leads me to what people. I mean, so with autism, it's a spectrum. We always say, oh, autism is a spectrum. It's a spectrum, meaning when you meet one person with autism, you've only met one person with autism. And terminology and references wise, there's so many ways you can say person with autism, person who's autistic. I always preface this, when you're speaking to someone, ask them what they're comfortable with, because there are people take offense to certain terms, but the thing that I really feel very strongly about that, people should know a little bit more about is there are so many misconceptions of autism out there, right? Like what you as well dealt with, Mother, with your family. I mean, it's important to understand every person, not just a child. We all have our strengths and weaknesses. Whether we want to label ourselves normal or neurodiverse, I mean, not that I'm saying neurodiverse is a label, right? Whatever we want to call ourselves, everyone has challenges, right? Some of us have official diagnosis, some of us don't. I'm just crazy, right? That's why I tell people I'm just crazy. So that's how you explain me. But with autism, there's so many misconceptions. And number one, there's always the blame game. It's the mother's fault. It's the father's fault. I had a GP tell me when I went in for a stomach ache, because I had all this information overload about autism and centers. I thought it was gastric, right? And so this GP asked me, she says, are you under a lot of stress? And I say, yeah, I'm looking for all these centers. My son is autistic. And she's like, oh, it's your fault. She just said that. And she did that. It's your fault. You ate whatever you want when you were pregnant, and that's why now your son has autism. And she went on to tell me that it's a generational thing, it's what we eat, and now that I know my son is autistic, I should feed him less because autistic kids need to be thin. And I just sat there in shock and a little bit of shame actually, because this is a doctor, and in Malaysia, in Asian countries, we still revere our doctors. Like, they are respected people who we think are so knowledgeable. And I walked out of that clinic and I never told anyone. I never told anyone about it immediately, especially my family. I just kept it to myself. But in hindsight, I think I need to go back now. Number one, correct this doctor. And secondly, she's the one who spurred me in the direction to do my master's, because I can confidently tell people now, no, it's nobody's fault. Autism is a neurological deficit, right? So if you want to look at it in layman terms, let's talk about our phones, right? You have an Android phone, you have an Apple phone. Two different operating systems. Both are still phones. So autistic people are still people, just like you and I, Mother, we are still people. Maybe our operating systems are different, right? Our brain processes things differently. So essentially, that's what autism is. The brain is processing things differently. Some things are much more challenging, right? So the three main things that usually someone has to tick the box in order to meet the criteria for autism is social communication impairment, social interaction impairment, and repetitive behavior. So these three are the main criteria for autism. And in Malaysia, we use the Diagnostics and Statistics Manual 5, DSM-5. We follow the American standards by APA. And autism is actually diagnosed in 3 levels. So the 3 levels will tell you how much support someone needs. So level 1 being what medical professionals say the mildest. So level 1 is mild, needing some support. level 2 is moderate, needing a substantial support, and level 3 is severe or needing the most support. But having said that, one thing I like to remind people always is just because someone has a level 1 diagnosis, it does not trivialize the challenges that they go through. They still go through a whole lot of challenges. They may be verbal, speaking to you and me like typical people, but I do know some autistic adults who are fairly social, but every time they go home, I have a friend in the UK. Every time she goes to a wedding, she's so exhausted after that. She goes a week without meeting people after that because it really takes a toll on her, right? That social interaction. So, everyone experiences things very differently. The other things that people always misconstrue about autism, it's a disease to be cured. Definitely not. It's not a disease. One does not suffer from autism. It's not physical. So when someone says, "Hey, my kid is autistic," I don't think it's appropriate for you to say, "Oh, they don't look autistic." It's different. Down syndrome is different. It's not caused by bad parenting or gadgets, right? Yes, gadgets is a whole other can of worms, which I think you could host another topic with someone else on that, but it does not cause autism. It's not that powerful. Putting your child in a typical kindergarten does not send the autism away. Right? If your kid has a diagnosis for autism, they need to be in an environment that's going to support them. It's not all about meltdowns, and tantrums. So meltdowns and tantrums are different, right? Meltdowns are something that's beyond their control. Their senses are in overload. They can't control what they're doing. The other misconception that is so popular is autistic people are either really smart or just have a very low IQ. Okay, so one thing I want to say about Savant syndrome, so like you watch shows like The Good Doctor, right? Savant syndrome is not exclusive to autism. There are savants who are not autistic, right? And in the autistic community, it's only 1 in 10 people who have Savant syndrome. And this is quite a dated statistic, the 1 in 10. I'm not sure what the latest is at the moment. And the other one, which really bothers me, is when people say autistics have no empathy, and I think that really is on a case-to-case basis. Some typical people have no empathy. uh, my son Hans, he's got so much empathy that even if I raise my voice to my dog, he can't take it. He can burst into tears even if I scold the dog because he loves the dog so much, right? So just a couple of things that I think um, in this day and age, it's the year 2022. Information is quite easily available. So and at the same time, that also opens up a lot of room for misinformation. So I always want to tell people, always check your sources. If you read something, I see on Facebook sometimes, and it just really angers me about this mats. You can buy a mat apparently, and you can sleep on it, and it cures autism. So I've written some very nasty comments and send them messages, and then the ad disappears. So always check back your facts, because sometimes people are just desperate for anything that's going to help in a given situation. So yeah, I'm going to hand it back over to you, Malar, before I talk another 30 minutes about misconceptions. I think you're on mute.
See, so excited. I say what you've said is really important. I won't say I comprehended everything that you said. I need to start watching The Good Doctor. Okay, I've only watched Love on the Spectrum, and it blew my mind away about love. I think I said this in my interview with Ivy Phillip, Employable, right? I said to her, when I watch Love on the Spectrum, that is what really love is. I think what other so-called normal people think is love, I'm not sure about it. You talk about being unconditional, being real, showing up as really who you are is what I learned, in Love on a Spectrum. So anyway, I'm going to catch up with Good Doctor, promise you that. Now, Siobhan says, Hans unknowingly pours love into all spaces just by being authentically himself, right?
Exactly.
And I think that's perfectly said, Siobhan. Thank you very much. I think
Thank you
one
so
thing
much.
one thing about kids like Hans is that they're authentic. They've not learned the world's way to put on and act and be acceptable. Our problem is, I think we're not able to accept people who show up as they are because we've built this picture of perfection, which comes with a lot of self control to the point of losing ourselves, right? Because whoever you call typical or I call normal or the world says normal, right? We I think we over celebrate people who have maybe too much of self control because with a lot of self control you come across perfect, right? And that could be the case. Now, help us understand because you said three things, right? Repetitive behavior, and two others is really ability to socialize or being with people, right? But let's go into say maybe repetitive behavior, right? Some very quickly tell us what are some. So I want to think about it not from a child's perspective. Let's say there are adults who have gone undiagnosed. I mean, those days there was a lot of people who have survived. I'm very sure I was, or maybe still am, dyslexic, right? Because it took me a long time to learn how to really read. I faked reading, right? So when I saw my daughter and I was working with my daughter, I could relate to her because it's like I was like that. It's just that I did not tell anybody, and I am a slow learner. It takes me a long time to learn anything, even now, right? So that being a part of it. So let's talk about if we think about adults who perhaps may not have gone through a diagnosis but are probably having difficulties, right? What are some things that other people, when you're looking at adults and discriminating them because they're not like not polished, not behaving, they're simple people, right? What are some things that we can look out for?
Well, with adults who have gone undiagnosed, that's a whole other ball game, if you ask me. And I think the best people to speak on that would be, if ever you could get an autistic adult to speak in a late diagnosed, that will be the best. That will be your best point of reference. But from what I've heard and observed, a lot of adults have already mastered the art of masking.
Yeah,
Masking is
yeah,
you are sort of blending in. So, like I
right.
told you the story about my friend, right? She can blend in. You could never tell that she's autistic or has some challenges, but she goes home and she just crashes because because the executive function is also comes into play. So when you are in override, you're trying to think, okay, what is an appropriate conversation? What's an appropriate response? Or you're thinking that, oh my God, that person's dress is so ugly. How do I tell her it's lovely, right? How do I make small talk? I mean, like you, mother, I think I myself was a slow learner as a kid, and I was always told I have like a mouth, right? Like I would just run off my mouth and tell people things like, your biscuits are not nice." My mom could tell you the funniest stories. Like people would come to my house and I tell them, "Why are you here? This is my house," But I was,
You
but
were
the good thing,
such a rude kid, Desiree. I
I
wasn't
know.
rude. I wasn't rude. I just didn't show people that I was stupid. I didn't
Yeah.
tell what I didn't know, so I was rather a quiet child, for a change.
Yeah, so I mean, repetitive behavior is what I mean. If you want to define repetitive behavior, I could give you an example with
Give a
Hans.
few examples. I mean,
So
not
like
yeah,
flapping of hands, some would pace up and down. So if you notice, some people would walk up and down, pacing, right? So that's repetitive behavior. But most important is, I think we need to understand the why behind it, right? So
right.
these are called stimming, right? Stimming when they flap, or some of them would play with their pen like this. Some kids, right? They can do this for hours. It's basically their way of taking care of their sensory integration issues, right? So a lot of people with autism have super sensitive sensory systems, right? So I know I have all these lights here with me. It's fine for me, but I think my son is bothered when he has white lights on throughout the day. We realize that he used to, at some point in the day, he'll start to turn off all the lights, right? So recently, when we did our house renovation, we've changed our living room lights to yellow lights, and he's completely fine. I can leave it on the whole day, and he's completely fine with it. But in his case, so again, it's a spectrum, right? So with Hans, he goes, he knows he has a need, he turns off the light, the need is met. But imagine a person who has, say, someone who says, no, I need the light, I need the light. So that's basically your recipe for a meltdown, right? Because you are preventing them from doing something that is helping them look after themselves, right? So with the hand flapping could be, I don't know, there's some feeling that they get from it. So, do it. And, so I've joined my son many times. So one of the approaches that I use with his teams is I use it to connect with him and I join him. So if he's jumping up and down, I jump in. If he's flapping, I flap with him. We have a lot of fun. So, and by doing it, I also understand, okay, this is what he's feeling. So repetitive behavior is that things that they do repetitively, mainly to help them calm their senses, actually.
Nice.
I hope that answers your question.
Yes and no. Yes and no. I think what you've pointed us out correctly is, when you said, I was smiling, right? When you said lights, I like yellow lights. I don't like white lights, right? So I laugh because I'm going to get my husband to listen to this. I say maybe I am autistic. So I was laughing from that perspective. But seriously, I think on a very serious note, I think what you've actually told is we are all different, and we need to find things for us to look after ourselves, right? There's a lot of loud voices out there as to me time, my way, what I want, what I need. That's because we can articulate it. We are empowered to ask for what we want. And I think people who are on the autistic spectrum, number one is they may not actually know what's happening with them, and they are figuring out their own way to pacify themselves. And I think what's worse is they may not know how to express it, which is why I think if we observe instead of jumping into anything, find out what is it that they are getting, how is it helping them, and whether people are on the spectrum or not, I think everyone does something that works for them. It may not work for you, it may not make sense to you, it may sound stupid to you, it may look silly for you, but get into their world to first observe, second to understand, and then see how best you can support. If you can't support, never mind, don't make life difficult for people. I mean, you can't support what you don't understand, right? So know that you don't understand, and just like stay away. Don't try to make it miserable for people. Just because you don't understand doesn't mean you know better. And I really don't think it is just about autism or anything else. I think it is about anything, right? We do things, we say things about what we don't understand because we think we're the smarter ones, right? Anyway, so I think that's really, really important. And I also like the fact that, one other thing that you actually said is that, when you're talking about your friend who feels overwhelmed, right? I hope you'll introduce me to her, and hopefully someone I can interview, because I think that would be really important, right? For those who can actually express themselves, to express, so that other people can understand what it feels to be in their world, right? So I think that's one. Number two is that the amount of effort that you say she puts in to be normal, to be normalized, right? Which, and what struck me when you said that is, I think we all do that, isn't it? We all try to fit in because we want people to accept us as they want us, not as we are. Acceptance is people accepting us as we are, but a lot of times we need to fit in because people have already shown you very clearly, if you don't fit into my criteria, you're not good enough to belong to my tribe. And we all do the fitting in, and we all know how exhausting it is to fit in. We all understand it, and how much more exhausting it can be for someone who has neurodiversity. It's a lot more work for them to do it, right? And I think the least that we can do is have some compassion, right? So you've given us a lot of nuggets to think about, and I've taken a lot of your space because you could have given us a lot more nuggets. So I'm going to stop there. And I'm going to ask you, if you think about this part of the world, Malaysia, right? There's so much of, I suppose, I don't know whether it's misconception. I think we're not resourceful in finding out what is the right information. Too too tired to think, too difficult to figure things out. Whereas you are on the opposite side where you went all out to find out, right? So, what are the missing pieces for us to embrace individuals on the spectrum in Malaysia? So, talk to the community. What do we need to do beyond observing, beyond understanding, beyond knowing everyone is different, right? So, when someone is obviously on the spectrum, we know they're on the spectrum, right? Could be on the spectrum, we may not understand it. First, as Malaysians, as what can we do? Whether we meet young children who don't behave themselves in public, who are having a tantrum in public, right? Yeah, what can we do?
I think the first step is to, if I will always tell people, even if you don't know, that's fine. Ask someone, like, say if a friend tells you my kid is autistic. I think a lot of times people mean really well. I mean, I don't think anyone has bad intentions by nature. People have the best of intentions, but sometimes the responses that come out, I think we need to ask ourselves, are we saying it to make ourselves feel better? Or are we trying to make the other person feel better? And some of the most comforting responses I've ever got from people are the ones who tell me, hey, I really don't know what to say to you right now, but I'm here for you. What do you need? I got your back. And I think that is the best response anyone can give anyone. Likewise, if you were to see someone having a meltdown in a public space and they have a caregiver or a companion with them, um, I mean, it's hard not to look, but if you don't want to help, no one's going to judge you for it. Walk away, don't stand and create a line. But if you want to help, offer it to the caregiver. Because I've been in that situation before, and I think it would have been great help because I had all these shopping bags, and poor Hans was having a really tough time in a shopping mall, and if someone had carried my bags, that would have helped. But instead, I had people stop and stare and look, but I didn't let that bother me because I think we've come way past that. My husband and I, since we got married 14 years ago, we are past bothering about what other people think about us or what we do. I think that's why we make such a good pair, right? So although all those people were watching me and looking at me, it didn't bother me. I was more bothered about getting my son to safety, right? So yeah, if you see someone having a tough time in public, help the caregiver or just walk away. And Project Haans is a good space to get started if you want to know a bit about neurodiversity and autism. Go to the website to learn about it. And I always say the best thing we can do is, if we don't know something, just ask. People will definitely answer this. And I would also like to think that our classrooms in Malaysia have progressed beyond that, right? I would like to think. I'm a tuition teacher as well, so always encourage my students to ask questions. And I don't and when I ask them questions, I don't expect them to know the answer because they are learning, right? And I think we have to remember that everyone out there is learning. I mean, for Kiwani's Academy Malaysia appointed me subject matter expert for autism, and I told them, look, I appreciate it. Yeah, yes, I'm appointed by them. I write modules for them, but I still don't know everything about autism, and I don't think anyone can. So that's why I still continue doing what I do. I would say, continue learning. Always ask. And the most important is ask the difficult questions, right? Because people, I think we shy away from asking those difficult questions. Just ask, right? When someone is in a situation, just ask the difficult question. Because, okay, say if I'm experiencing something really terrible, I'm wondering whether are you ready to really listen to me, or do you just want a lip service response? So if you really want that in-depth answer, ask and probe.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thank you. It reminds me of a book called What Happened, I can't remember the author. I'll probably get to it shortly. I think it's Bruce Perry. I think, and he says, not specifically to autism, whenever people are overwhelmed and are behaving in a way we don't understand, instead of saying why, ask what happened, because they will tell you what led them to behave the way they actually behaved, right? Now, I'm going to ask you a horrible question. Don't hate me for this. Okay, don't hate me because
Not at all. Ask away.
Desiree, I mean, your child is autistic, right? Your child is going to have why can't you keep your child at home? Why you must bring to the mall? Tell me.
Mm. Well, because my child is human, right? And all humans deserve to experience the world, right?
Yeah,
So
but
why
you're
should?
making our life difficult. Your child doesn't know how to behave himself.
Well, then I would say if you don't like what you see, then you stay at home.
I love it.
Sorry. I mean, I've learned to respond to rude comments with rude comments in
Yeah.
return.
So
So,
all those people
yeah.
who know rude people like this, please send them this clip, okay? I just hope people don't just clip me and put it up because I'll become viral for being so nasty. No, okay, give context. Now,
I'll
because
back you up.
right? No, because that's I've heard my friends, when they have other children who are slower, and they say this, right? They say, why include that and slow my child's progress, and these are really educated people, Desiree. So I can imagine people saying, why bring, you're making my life miserable. I came to a restaurant to eat, why like that? Why? So that's for them. So if you don't like it, don't come. Okay, but that's what says Desiree. But never mind. Let's look at what Isabel is saying. Isabel, thank you for joining us. She has said couple of very important things. She says we should have a discussion on inclusion in schools for autism and other learning abilities. Isabel, I will say we need to start having these conversations at home first. The
Yep.
moment our children come and say something positive or negative about someone who's different, I think that's the best time to talk about this. But before we can talk about this, we need to also learn. I think the problem is, because we don't know, right? We tend to pass on the wrong thing to the kids. So yes, I'm totally in agreement with you. Um, I agree with Desiree. It's exhausting mentally, physically, financially as a parent to kids in spectrum. The society has to change to be more inclusive. I feel school plays a very important role to help more an inclusive society. Isabel, I can't agree with you more because I've got 3 children. It is mentally, physically, financially already exhausting. When you have a child who needs any type of special attention, even if your child is slow in maths and you need to get extra tuition for that, it is exhausting because they can't follow the system that is there to, and it is exhausting, right? Because one is to make the right choice and to follow through the choice and to pay for them, right? Which is why we say it takes a village to raise a child, right? But what I actually like about what you're saying is that yes, it is exhausting. We need to mold, which is why I think my next question is going to be very important financially. So you see, I think what uh, anyone with special needs, not just children, but a family member who has a need, an aging parent or a sick parent, anyone that you're looking after as a caretaker, all right? It's exhausting and you need more financial resources. And so Project Hans is something that you are doing really well. And Siobhan is saying education doesn't mean anything if one doesn't know what it means to be human first, right? Now, which is why I think Project Hans is important because you've put all the resources. And please share Project Hans with people because Desiree has put on with her own effort, right? It's all hers, no one is sponsoring her. She's brought together all the resources that she has found either for herself or that she has learned along the way, and she's put it in one system, right? Now, what we want to do is that, see, sometimes you can go to a system, find the resource, but you also must make it more available in a way that is affordable. Because usually, if you are a caretaker, you can't actually really have a proper career because you need to be physically present with your kid, right? So already you need more money to help as a caretaker. Now you have less money, less earning ability because you are spending time here, right? So, which is why, I want to know, can you share with us what's your vision for Project Hans? And I'm hoping and highly praying that you're not going to say it's just going to be a website. I think it needs to be bigger. So tell me, what's your vision, your dream, darling, for Project Hans?
Well, initially when I started it, I always wanted to build a school. But, there are so many schools, so many intervention centers. In fact, today, someone in my Kiwanis group was just, telling me you should, do more with Project Hans. There's so much you can do. And actually, lately, my aim is to hopefully get research grants to write more academic papers on how play and interaction based approaches are a lot more effective for people with autism, whether they are kids or adults. Because in Malaysia, um, we still do a lot of ABA, applied behavioral analysis. And back in the day, I mean, there's a lot of stigma behind it. There's also a lot of research behind it. But ABA, if you do it well, I think it's fine. But for me, the thing that I really don't like about ABA is the intention is to modify the behavior, right? And to me, there's nothing wrong with behavior of my child. It's because his behavior, there's a reason behind why he's doing what he's doing, right? So, which is why I would like to push for more interaction based, play based approaches. Get to know the child, get to know the person. What is it that's really bothering them that's leading to the behaviors that, seem to be not liked or not wanted, right? There's always a reason. People don't just do things to irritate you. There's always a reason, right? So my aim is, and usually, so we sorry, I have so much to say, right? And then it's all coming out jumbled up. So I'm gonna pause. Okay, the consensus is there isn't enough empirical evidence or data to support play-based approaches. So that's why you don't have enough doctors and medical professionals saying, hey, go and do this play-based or go and do sensory integration. Even sensory integration, I think, is not an official type of intervention that is recommended here in Malaysia. So it's if parents find out, they find out and then they do it, right? Even sensory processing disorder it should be a diagnosis on its own, which don't think it is at the moment. So there's so many things, right? By looking at the person first. So I'm hoping that Project Hans can contribute to that part of research, because that's something I'm confident I can do. In terms of building schools and all that, there's so many people out there doing good work already, building schools. There are people out there, like the Therapy Through Play program by Nori Abdullah. She gets sponsored for B40 children to train the parents how to work with your autistic kids. So there are already people out there doing work to serve the underserved communities. Then you have Anis Selangor, where they have a lot of grants, and you can apply for bantuan or financial aid. So there are people out there trying to make it affordable. So where I think Project Hans can fill the gap is, like I said, I love writing. I'm a bit of a nerd, so maybe in more academic papers. I think that's the next step for me.
Nice. Thank you. Whoa, that's a lot of work. So grants and but one thing that struck me before I read what Isabel has written is you talk about learning through play, but there's a lot of already evidence that play is the best way to learn for children. Despite that evidence, our academic schools are very academically driven, right?
Exactly.
Already for a kid who's not on the spectrum, play is already established as a great learning tool. Despite knowing that, we don't send our children to school that advocates play. You play schools can't make as much money compared to if you promise A's, right?
Exactly.
And
I I don't understand. I mean, for me, because I grew up in a family where my parents, I mentioned earlier, I was a bit of a slow learner, right? My parents never pressured me academically. I pressured myself academically, and so which is why when with Hans being different, I'm not worried about the A, B's, and C's, So when I sent him off to early intervention at the age of 3, I told the teachers, I'm like, don't worry about ABC, 1, 2, 3, reading and whatnot. Settle his things like going to the toilet, learning how to hold a spoon, learning how to, wear a shirt, learning how to play with others. That first. The ABCs, 1, 2, 3s, and all can come later. And I think school was a little bit shocked at first, but then, they followed exactly what I wanted.
Yeah,
So play is so
because
important.
I don't think the teachers are sometimes the problem. I have found that the parents are the issue, because when we parents send our children to school or a tuition center, what we're expecting is for them to improve. And these improvements are measured through assessment, i.e., your test papers. So I think, yeah, you the school system will meet the needs of the parents. So it is really my hope that parents will have a bit more clarity as to what we want for our children, and not follow the noise that is on the outside, right? So I'm just going to read what Isabel has said. She has said something really important here. She said, school gives opportunities you don't have at home and challenges you don't see at home. Yes, I agree. I have 11 and a 9-year-old who are in the mainstream, shadowed as special needs teacher and advocating for my own children. Also, she has shadowed as a trained functional behavior observer. We have a long way to go. Isabel, I need to talk to you because I need to understand what is this trained functional behavior, right? We probably need to have you in our show, and we only have 28 episodes more. Okay, Siobhan, who has already said yes to our show, says, Hansen, you are an inspiration, Desiree. Thank you for sharing with us. Thank you very much, Siobhan. And Gerald says, thank you, Desiree, for sharing, and definitely an inspiration, both you and Hans. Oh, God bless. So, yeah, we can continue being inspired to inspire by playing the cards that's given to us. Well, is what I'm learning from Desiree. And Desiree, I really want to thank you for actually more than sharing. I think first for helping us to think why it's important to know what we are dealing with, get information right. Because I do have friends whom I know who have children who have some special needs, but refuse to get a diagnosis because they don't want to deal with it, right? So thank you for first inspiring us about acceptance and telling us acceptance is normal and we have ups and downs. And it's okay to be human even with the acceptance. Then telling us how it's important for us to use our sense of judgment to figure out what is the right information, and then looking for the right thing to help our children, which is why we have parents. And thank you for sharing your stories so courageously, boldly, and helping us figure out what's wrong with us and not with people who are different, to create a more inclusive community. And most importantly, thank you for holding on to this dream of wanting to make this world not just a better place, but the way it is supposed to be, a place for everybody. Before we say goodbye, any parting words for people who are maybe just joined us, are listening towards the end, and why they should actually be listening to this episode from the beginning? Tell us something before we say goodbye.
Firstly, thank you so much for summarizing that so well, and thank you for asking me, allowing me to share. I think I just want to give a shout out to my family. My husband's amazing. He's my hero. He's always there. He supports me 100% in whatever I do, and my parents. My mom is just always a phone call away. I tell her, Mom, I need you, and she comes home. And I would like to give a special shout out to my dad because he's a very important figure in my son's life. And for a guy of his age, my dad is 70, and he says his best friend is his buddy Hans.
Oh,
And even with the autism diagnosis and all that, he was just always so eager on how can he connect with his grandson, and they do it so beautifully. in their own way. Even I don't have that kind of connection, right? Because everyone connects differently. So yeah, I would say my special shout out goes to my family, my biggest supporters. And thank you for Isabel and Siobhan for listening in, watching, and Nini, I saw your comment there as well. So thank you. I'm very grateful to everyone.
Oh, thank you. And I think this is the second time I'm hearing about your parents. And I think, I don't wish, but we all pray we have family members who would support us. And when we don't, then we need to build our own tribe that can support us. That comes uh, in the form of community, friends, who then become family, right? And I think that's really important because while I'm so happy for you, and I'm actually very eager to meet your parents from the posts I've actually read and what I've listened to you. It's so important, I think, for us to know how we can support people closest to us, whether we are family or friends. So thanks for telling that story. That what's important is we figure out ways to connect, and connection is the first really level of providing support, because once we connect we will understand, and once we understand we'll know what's the right thing to do to support, right? And also the bit just now where you actually said support the caregiver. If you don't know what to do, the easiest person to support is actually the caregiver, because the caregiver can tell you what support he or she needs. And a shout out to your wonderful husband, all right? And for being the amazing hero that he is, with his untold story, which probably would be a story for another day. So, thank you, Desiree. It's been such a beautiful Friday listening to you. And with that, God bless you, and I wish you all the best for Project Haans to go viral. Thank you.
Thank you again.
All right. So as we say goodbye to Desiree, I hope you are as inspired as I am. I have been. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Support us lah, right? And if you don't like my face and my expression, no worries. Get on Spotify, look for Being Whole, Being Me series, and we are in series 72, and we have got 28 more weeks to go before we end Being Whole, Being Me. So this is Malar from Hearts and Minds Development Center signing off, feeling really inspired, wishing everybody a great Friday and an amazing weekend, because that's how it's going to be for me. Bye. Stay safe.